Oisín and Niamh, a tale of love, time, and loss. A journey to the land of eternal youth. Part 1. The Green Hills of Ireland. In the days when Ireland was still wrapped in mist and magic, when the ancient gods walked among mortals and the boundary between this world and the other world was as thin as morning fog, there lived a warrior poet named Oisín. His name meant little deer, or fawn, and this name carried within it a story of transformation and wonder, for his mother Sab had been changed into a deer by dark magic, and Oisín himself had been born in the wild places, discovered by his father Fianna 7 years after his mother's disappearance. Oisín grew to become one of the greatest warriors of the Fianna, that legendary band of hunter warriors who roamed the green hills and dark forests of Ireland, protecting the High King and defending the land from all threats both natural and supernatural. The Fianna were no ordinary soldiers. They were bound by a code of honor that valued courage, wisdom, generosity, and loyalty above all else. To join their ranks, a man had to pass tests that would break lesser warriors. He had to defend himself while buried waist-deep in the ground against 9 warriors with spears. He had to run through the forest pursued by all the Fianna and emerge without a scratch, not a twig broken beneath his feet, no braid loosened in his hair. He had to leap over a branch as high as his forehead while running at full speed, pass under one as low as his knee, and pull a thorn from his foot while never breaking stride. Only when he had passed all these tests and many more besides, could a man join the Fianna. Oisín had passed every test with ease, for he was his father's son, and Fianna was the greatest leader the Fianna had ever known. Finn was a man of extraordinary wisdom. He had tasted the salmon of knowledge as a youth, and ever after, he had only to suck his thumb to receive answers to any question he might have. Under Finn's leadership, the Fianna had become more than warriors. They were poets and storytellers, hunters and philosophers, men who understood that true strength came not just from the sword arm but from the cultivated mind and the generous heart. Oisín himself was known as much for his poetry as for his prowess in battle. While other warriors might boast of enemies slain or monsters defeated, Oisín would compose verses about the flight of birds across autumn skies, the way morning light fell through oak leaves, the sound of rivers running over ancient stones. His poems were treasured throughout Ireland, sung around fires in great halls and humble cottages alike, passed from one generation to the next, keeping alive the memory of deeds both great and small. On a certain spring morning, and the spring in Ireland in those days was something to behold, when the whole land seemed to wake from winter's sleep with an explosion of green growth and birdsong, Oisín and the Fianna were hunting deer on the shores of Loch Lean in County Kerry. The lake was beautiful beyond description, its waters so clear you could see fish swimming in the depths, surrounded by mountains that rose like the bones of the earth itself, still capped with snow from winter though spring flowers were blooming in the valleys below. The Fianna had been tracking a great stag through the forest since dawn, following its trail through stands of oak and ash, across streams swollen with snowmelt, up rocky slopes where mountain goats picked their way between stones. The hunt had been long and exhilarating, the kind of pursuit that made a man feel truly alive, pitting his skill and endurance against the wild cunning of the deer. But now, as the sun climbed toward noon, they had lost the trail and stopped to rest on a hilltop overlooking the lake. The warriors sprawled on the grass, sharing water from leather flasks, eating dried meat and oatcakes, laughing and telling stories as they always did when the immediate business of hunting or fighting allowed. Finn sat slightly apart from the others, as befitted his position as leader, with his 2 great hounds Bran and Sealang lying at his feet. These hounds were actually Finn's nephews, transformed by cruel magic, but they served him faithfully nonetheless, their keen noses able to track any quarry across any terrain. Oisín was sitting near his father, composing in his mind a poem about the morning's hunt, searching for words that would capture the particular quality of light filtering through new leaves, when one of the warriors called out, pointing toward the lake below. "Look there! A rider approaches." Everyone turned to look, and what they saw made even these hardened warriors catch their breath in wonder. A horse was coming toward them from the direction of the lake, but this was no ordinary horse. It was white as new snow, white as sea foam, white as the clouds that drift across summer skies. Its coat seemed to glow with an inner light, and it moved with such grace that its hooves barely seemed to touch the ground. The horse ran across the surface of the lake itself, its hooves sending up small splashes but never sinking, as if the water were solid ground beneath its feet. And on the horse's back sat a woman who made even the remarkable horse seem ordinary by comparison. She was beautiful in a way that human women rarely achieved, not because human women lacked beauty, but because this was beauty of a different order entirely, the beauty of the other world, the beauty of those who lived beyond the bounds of mortal time. Her hair was golden, not the yellow gold of ripe wheat but the pure radiant gold of sunlight itself, and it fell in waves down her back to her waist, moving and shimmering with every step the white horse took. She wore a dress of palest blue that seemed to be studded with stars, real stars that twinkled and shone, as if she had stolen fragments of the night sky and woven them into cloth. Around her hung a golden light, soft but unmistakable, the kind of radiance that marked those who belonged to the Tuatha Dé Danann, the gods of pre-Christian Ireland who had retreated to the other world when the Milesians came but who still sometimes walked among mortals when it pleased them. As the woman and her magical horse drew closer, climbing from the lake shore toward the hilltop where the Fianna waited in silent amazement, Oisín felt something shift in his chest, a recognition that went deeper than thought, deeper than reason. This was a moment that would change everything, though he did not yet understand how or why. All he knew was that he could not look away from this golden-haired woman who rode toward him out of legend itself. The horse stopped a few paces from where Finn stood, and the woman looked down at the assembled warriors with eyes that held depths no mortal gaze could match, green as the sea, old as the hills, filled with knowledge of things that humans were not meant to know. Finn stepped forward, his hand resting lightly on the head of Bran, and spoke with the courtesy that was always shown to visitors, whether mortal or otherwise. "Welcome, fair lady. You honor us with your presence. May I ask your name and from what land you have come?" The woman smiled, and her smile was like sunrise after a long night. When she spoke, her voice was musical, each word clear as a bell, resonant with harmonies that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I am Niamh," she said, and the name seemed to linger in the air like a blessing. "Niamh Sinwar, Niamh of the golden hair. My father is Manannan Mac Lyre, the sea god, and my mother is a queen of the Tuatha Dé Danann. I dwell in Tir na Nog, the land of the young, the land of eternal youth, which lies beyond the sunset in the western sea." A murmur ran through the assembled Fianna. Everyone had heard of Tir na Nog, that paradise realm where no one aged or died, where sorrow was unknown and joy was endless, where the trees were always green and flowers always in bloom. But it was one thing to hear stories told around fires on winter nights, and quite another to meet someone who actually lived in that legendary land. "And why have you come to our world, Lady Niamh?" Finn asked, though something in his wise eyes suggested he might already suspect the answer. Niamh's gaze moved from Finn to sweep across the assembled warriors, and then it settled on Oisín and stayed there. "I have heard tales of a warrior poet named Oisín, son of Finn Mac Cumhaill," she said. "His fame has reached even to the shores of Tir na Nog. They speak of his courage in battle, his skill with sword and spear, his fleetness of foot that can outrun the deer. But even more, they speak of his poetry, his verses that capture the soul of Ireland in words, his ability to see beauty in all things and give that beauty voice." She paused, and her green eyes locked with Oisín's brown ones, and in that moment, something passed between them that needed no words. A recognition, a connection, perhaps even the beginning of love, though love that begins so suddenly might better be called destiny or fate. "I have come," Niamh continued, still looking at Oisín, "to ask him if he will return with me to Tir na Nog, to dwell there in the land of eternal youth, where we know no sorrow and where time flows differently than it does in the mortal world. I have come to invite him to share my life, to walk with me in gardens where flowers never fade, to compose his poetry in a land where beauty never dims, to live forever young and strong, never knowing the touch of age or illness or death. A profound silence fell over the hilltop. Every warrior there understood the magnitude of what had just been offered. To go to Tir na Nog was the dream of every mortal who heard the tales. To escape death, to live forever in paradise, to leave behind the hardships and sorrows of the mortal world. And yet it was also terrible in its way, for to go to the other world was to leave behind everything and everyone one had ever known, to step out of the stream of mortal time into something stranger and more permanent. Oisín felt his heart hammering in his chest. He looked at Niamh, at her impossible beauty, her golden hair, her eyes that promised wonders beyond imagining. Then he looked at his father Finn, at the other warriors of the Fianna who were his brothers in all but blood, at the green hills of Ireland spread out below them, at Loch Lean shining in the sunlight. This was his world, his home, his life. Here were the people he loved, the places he knew, the work he had chosen. Could he leave it all for a woman he had just met, no matter how beautiful, no matter what paradise she offered? But even as doubt formed, something stronger rose to meet it. When he looked at Niamh, he felt as if he were looking at the answer to a question he had been asking all his life without knowing it. More than that, he felt as if she were looking at him the same way, as if this meeting had not been chance but something that was meant to be, written in whatever book the gods kept that recorded the fates of all beings, mortal and immortal alike. Oisín began, then paused, searching for words. How could he explain what he was feeling? How could he make his father understand? Finn was watching him with an expression Oisín had never seen before. Sadness mixed with understanding, love mixed with resignation. "My son," he said quietly, "I see in your eyes that you have already made your choice. And though it grieves me to think of losing you, I will not stand in the way of your destiny. If you wish to go with Niamh to Tir na Nog, you have my blessing." "Father," Oisín said, and his voice cracked with emotion, "I don't want to leave you. You and the Fianna are my family, my brothers. Ireland is my home. And yet you must go," Finn finished for him. "I understand, Oisín. When a man meets his fate, he must follow it, no matter where it leads. Only promise me this, that you will remember us, remember Ireland, remember the life you lived here. Promise me that you will not forget." "I promise," Oisín said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. "I will never forget. And Father, I will return. I swear it. This is not goodbye forever. I will come back to visit, to see you again, to hunt with the Fianna once more." Finn's expression grew troubled. "Be careful of such promises, my son. The other world is not like our world. Time flows differently there. What seems like a day in Tir na Nog might be years here. What seems like a few years there might be centuries in Ireland. If you go, you may not find things as you left them when you return." But Oisín was young, and youth believes that promises can be kept through force of will alone, that nothing is truly impossible for those who desire it strongly enough. "I will return," he said again. "I swear it on my honor as a warrior and a poet of the Fianna." He turned back to Niamh, who had been watching this exchange with patient understanding. "I will go with you to Tir na Nog if you will have me." Joy lit Niamh's face like the sun breaking through clouds. "Come then, Oisín, son of Finn. Come to the land of the young, where we will live together in joy and beauty beyond mortal understanding." She held out her hand to him and he took it. Her skin was cool and smooth as silk, and the touch sent a thrill through him unlike anything he had ever felt. She helped him mount the white horse behind her, and he wrapped his arms around her waist, feeling the warmth of her body, smelling the scent of her hair, like flowers and sea spray and something indefinable that belonged only to the other world. "Farewell, father," Oisín called out as the horse began to move. "Farewell, my brothers of the Fianna. I will return to you, I swear it." The warriors raised their weapons in salute, their faces showing mingled joy for their brother's fortune and sorrow at his departure. Finn stood tall and straight, his hand raised in blessing, his 2 hounds sitting alert beside him. And then the white horse broke into a gallop, moving with that same supernatural grace, and in moments they were racing down the hillside toward the lake. Oisín looked back once and saw his father and the Fianna growing smaller in the distance, saw the green hills of Kerry spread out in the sunlight, saw Ireland in all its beauty. Then they reached the lake, and the horses' hooves touched the water, and instead of sinking they ran across the surface as they had come, sending up sparkling spray that caught the sunlight like diamonds. Oisín held tight to Niamh as the horse ran westward, out across Loch Lean toward where it emptied into the sea, and then out across the sea itself, racing over waves that would have swamped any normal boat, moving faster than the fastest ship ever built. The coast of Ireland receded behind them, becoming a dark line on the horizon, then a smudge, then nothing but empty ocean in all directions. The sun continued its journey westward, and they followed it, racing across the Atlantic waters toward the edge of the world where the other world was said to lie. As they rode, Niamh began to sing, a song without words, just pure melody that rose and fell like the waves beneath them, that spoke of beauty and longing and joy too great for words. Oisín listened, enchanted, and gradually he began to understand that they were passing through veils, crossing boundaries between the mortal world and the immortal one, moving from the realm of time into the realm of timelessness. The sky began to change. The blue of ordinary daylight deepened into colors that had no names, purples and golds and silvers that shimmered and shifted. The sun seemed to grow larger, brighter, more radiant than any mortal sun. Stars appeared even though it was still daytime, and they were closer somehow, as if the sky had lowered to meet the earth, or the earth had risen to meet the sky. And then, on the horizon ahead, land appeared. At first it was just a green smudge, but as they drew closer, it resolved into a shore of white sand, and beyond that, meadows of flowers more beautiful than any that grew in Ireland. Trees rose in groves of perfect arrangement, their leaves every shade of green imaginable, their branches heavy with fruits that gleamed like jewels. Streams ran silver through the grass, and in the distance, mountains rose against the strange beautiful sky, their peaks seeming to touch the very stars. "Welcome to Tir na Nog," Niamh said softly. "Welcome to the land of eternal youth, your home forever now." The white horse's hooves touched the sand, and for the first time since leaving Ireland, they touched solid ground. Niamh dismounted gracefully and helped Oisín down, and as soon as his feet touched the sand of Tir na Nog, he felt something change within him. A lightening, a strengthening, as if weights he had not known he carried had been lifted away. He looked around in wonder. Everything was more vivid here, more real somehow than even Ireland at its most beautiful. The grass was greener, the flowers more fragrant, the air sweeter. Bird song filled the air, not the harsh cries of crows or the chittering of ordinary sparrows, but melodies of heartbreaking beauty. And everywhere there was light, golden, gentle, warm light that seemed to come from the air itself as much as from the sun above. "It's beautiful," Oisín breathed. "More beautiful than any poem could describe." "Then you will have to create new words," Niamh said with a smile. "New ways of speaking about beauty, for you are a poet, and this is your new subject." She took his hand and led him inland, away from the shore, through meadows where flowers bloomed in profusion. Roses and lilies, forget-me-nots and morning glories, species that bloomed in different seasons in Ireland but here all flowered together in impossible harmony. They passed groves of apple trees heavy with golden fruit, orchards of trees Oisín did not recognize that bore blossoms and fruit simultaneously. And soon they came to a palace that made the halls of Tara, the greatest building Oisín had ever seen in Ireland, seem like a crude shepherd's hut by comparison. The palace was built of white marble that seemed to glow from within, with pillars carved into fantastic shapes, with golden domes that caught the light and scattered it in rainbow patterns. Gardens surrounded it, fountains played in crystal pools, and everywhere there were people, beautiful people dressed in silks and fine linens, people who moved with grace and laughed with genuine joy, people who looked at Oisín with welcome and curiosity. A man and woman came forward to greet them, and Oisín knew immediately that these must be Niamh's parents, both tall and beautiful, both radiating the same otherworldly presence that Niamh possessed, though tempered by age and authority. Manannán mac Lir, the sea god, looked at Oisín with eyes the color of deep ocean, measuring him, judging his worth. Niamh's mother, whose name Oisín learned was Fianna, regarded him with warmth and welcome. "So this is the mortal who has won my daughter's heart," Manannán said, and his voice was like waves breaking on shore, powerful and relentless. "Oisín, son of Finn mac Cumhaill, poet and warrior of the Fianna. You are welcome in Tir na Nog, though you should know that by coming here, you have left your former life behind. Time moves differently in this place. A day here might be a year in Ireland, or a year here might be a century there. Once you have drunk the water of this land, eaten its food, slept beneath its stars, you can never truly return to the mortal world as you were." "I understand," Oisín said, though in truth he did not really. How could a mortal mind grasp the true meaning of immortality, of time that flowed like honey instead of like a river, of a life that would never end? "Do you love my daughter?" Fianna asked, her voice gentle but her gaze sharp. Oisín looked at Niamh, at her golden hair and green eyes, at the way she smiled at him with trust and hope and something that might already be love. "I do," he said, and as the words left his mouth, he knew they were true. He had loved her from the moment he saw her, and that love would only grow deeper with time, and in Tir na Nog, there would be all the time in the world for love to grow. "Then you have our blessing," Manannán said. "Be welcome in our house, Oisín. Be welcome in our land. Live here in joy and never know sorrow." And so began Oisín's life in Tir na Nog. Part 2. Life in the Land of Eternal Youth. The days in Tir na Nog, though days was perhaps the wrong word, for time did not march forward here as it did in Ireland but seemed to circle and swirl and exist all at once, were filled with pleasures Oisín had never imagined possible. He and Niamh were married in a ceremony attended by all the Tuatha De Danann, with music played on harps of silver and gold, with feasting that lasted for what might have been weeks but felt like hours, with dancing that made even the stars seem to join in the celebration. Their marriage was blessed with children, a son they named Oscar, who inherited both his father's skill at poetry and his mother's immortal grace, a daughter they called Plor na Mban, flower of women, whose beauty was such that even in Tir na Nog she was remarked upon, and another son they named Finn after Oisín's father, though this child would never meet the grandfather whose name he bore. Oisín spent his time in pursuits both martial and artistic. There were hunts in Tir na Nog, though the beasts hunted here were not ordinary deer but magical creatures like the white stag that could run across water, or the golden boar whose tusks were made of fire, or the silver salmon that swam through air as easily as through water. These hunts were not about killing for food, for no one needed to kill in Tir na Nog where sustenance came freely. Instead, they were tests of skill and courage, games almost, where the hunter and the hunted both understood the roles they played. And there were competitions among the warriors of Tir na Nog, not bloody battles but contests of strength and skill, wrestling matches and races, sword practice that was more like dance than combat. Oisín proved himself more than equal to these challenges, his mortal training serving him well even among immortals, and he won honor and respect among the Tuatha De Danann. But it was in his poetry that Oisín truly excelled in Tir na Nog. He composed verses about the strange beautiful land he now called home, trying to capture in words the particular quality of light that was not quite sunlight, the way flowers bloomed and never faded, the sound of Niamh's laughter which was like bells made of crystal. He wrote love poems for his wife that made even the ancient gods weep with their beauty. He wrote ballads about his children, celebrating Oscar's first successful hunt, Plor na Mban's first poem, young Finn's first steps. And sometimes, late in the evening, though evening was another word that barely applied in Tir na Nog where the sun set in colors of gold and purple but true darkness never came, Oisín would compose poems about Ireland, about the green hills he had left behind, about his father Finn and the warriors of the Fianna, about the particular smell of Irish rain and the sound of Irish wine through Irish trees. These poems made Niamh sad when she heard them, though she tried to hide it. "Do you regret coming here?" she would ask. "Do you wish you had stayed in Ireland?" "No," Oisín would assure her, taking her hands in his. "I love you and I love our children and I love this beautiful land. I would not trade our life together for anything. But Ireland is still part of me, still written into my bones and blood. I can be happy here and still remember there. The two are not opposites." "I know," Niamh would say. "I just worry that the remembering will become longing, and the longing will become sorrow, and you will lose the joy of Tir na Nog trying to hold on to a world that is no longer yours." And Oisín would kiss her and promise that this would never happen, that he was content, that the past was past and he had no desire to return to it. But as time passed, and time in Tir na Nog was a strange thing, moving in spirals and eddies rather than the straight line it followed in the mortal world, Oisín found that Niamh's fears were not entirely unfounded. His memories of Ireland, instead of fading as one might expect, grew stronger and more vivid. He would wake from dreams of hunting with the Fianna through Kerry forests, of listening to his father tell stories around the fire, of the very particular green of Irish grass after rain. And these dreams would leave him with an ache he could not name, a longing he could not quite explain. What he did not realize, could not realize, was that while he had been in Tir na Nog living what seemed like a few pleasant years, centuries were passing in Ireland. The world he remembered was already ancient history, and everyone he had known was long dead. One morning, if it could be called morning in a place where the sun rose and set by whim rather than schedule, Oisín woke with the longing so strong he could not ignore it. He lay beside Niamh, watching her sleep, her golden hair spread across the pillow like spilled sunlight, and he felt love for her so powerful it was almost pain. But beneath that love, the homesickness burned like a banked fire, waiting only for the slightest breath to burst into flame. "Niamh," he said softly, not really meaning to wake her but not sorry when her eyes opened and she looked at him with that mixture of love and sadness he had come to recognize. "You want to go back," she said. It was not a question. "Just for a visit," Oisín said quickly. "Just to see my father again, to hunt once more with the Fianna, to set foot on Irish soil and know that I have not forgotten where I came from. I swear I will return to you, Niamh. I swear it on everything I hold sacred. You are my wife, my love, my life. Tir na Nog is my home now. But I need to see Ireland one more time. I need to say a proper goodbye to my former life." Tears welled in Niamh's green eyes and she sat up, taking Oisín's hands in hers. "I knew this day would come," she said. "I have been dreading it since the first time I heard longing in your poetry. Oisín, my love, my heart, I do not want you to go. Not because I fear you will not return, I know you love me and would come back if you could, but because I fear what you will find in Ireland." "What do you mean?" Oisín asked, confused. "Time in Tir na Nog does not flow as it does in the mortal world," Niamh said. "You know this, we told you when you first came here. But knowing it and understanding it are different things. Oisín, how long do you think you have been here?" Oisín considered. It was hard to say. Days blended into each other in Tir na Nog. Seasons did not change, years did not pile up the way they did in the mortal world. 3 years perhaps, he said. Maybe 4. Niamh shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. 300 years, my love. 300 years have passed in Ireland since the day you left with me. Your father Finn is long dead. The Fianna are gone, scattered to history and legend. The Ireland you remember exists now only in stories, and even those stories have been changed by time and telling. Everyone you knew is dust. The places you loved have changed beyond recognition. If you return, you will be returning to a world that is not yours, that has moved on without you, that will seem as strange and foreign as Tir na Nog seemed to you when you first arrived. Oisín felt as if the ground had dropped away beneath him. 300 years? It was impossible. Could not be true. And yet he looked into Niamh's eyes and knew she would not lie to him, not about something like this. 300 years. His father dead for centuries. The Fianna passed into legend. Ireland transformed into something he would not recognize. Then I must go, he said, and his voice sounded strange to his own ears, hollow with shock but also filled with desperate determination. If what you say is true, then I am the last of the Fianna still living, the last one who remembers those days, who knew those men. I am the last link between the legends and the truth. I must go, Niamh. I must see what has become of Ireland. I must bear witness. And I cannot stop you, Niamh said, because I love you too much to keep you here against your will. But Oisín, please listen to me carefully. I will give you my horse, the white horse that brought you here. It is a magical creature, part of Tír na nOg, not subject to the laws of mortal time. As long as you ride it, as long as your feet do not touch the ground of Ireland, you will remain as you are, young, strong, immortal. The 300 years will not touch you. She gripped his hands tighter, her voice becoming urgent. But if you dismount, if even 1 foot touches Irish soil, then all those years will catch up with you in an instant. You will age 300 years in the space of a heartbeat. You will become an old, old man, and you will die, and I will never see you again, not in this life or any other, for you will pass beyond the circles of the world where even my people cannot follow. I understand, Oisín said, though the full weight of the warning had not yet settled on him. I will stay on the horse. I will not dismount. I will look upon Ireland, see what has become of it, and then I will return to you. I swear it, Niamh. I will return. They spent the rest of that strange timeless day together, Niamh and Oisín holding each other, speaking of their love, making memories to sustain them through the separation to come. They walked with their children through the gardens of Tír na nOg, and Oisín told Oscar and Plor Niamh Ben and young Finn about Ireland, about their grandfather whom they would never meet, about the green land across the sea where their father had been born. And when the time came for Oisín to leave, Niamh brought out the white horse that had carried them both to Tír na nOg so long ago. The horse nuzzled Oisín's hand with recognition, and he stroked its silky neck, remembering that first wild ride across the water. Take care of him, Imbar, Niamh whispered to the horse. Bring him back to me safely. She turned to Oisín, and there were no more words that needed saying. They had said everything already. She helped him mount the horse, and he looked down at her, memorizing her face, the golden hair, the green eyes, the beloved features he knew as well as his own. I will return, he said one last time. Wait for me. I will wait, Niamh promised. I will wait forever if I must, though I hope it will not be so long. Ride swiftly, my love. See what you need to see, and then come home to me. Oisín turned the white horse toward the shore, toward the sea that separated Tír na nOg from Ireland. Behind him, Niamh stood with their children, her hand raised in farewell or perhaps in blessing. He looked back once, fixing the image in his memory, and then he urged the horse forward. The white horse broke into that supernatural gallop, its hooves barely touching the ground, and soon they were racing across the water, back toward the east, back toward Ireland, back toward the world of time and change and death that Oisín had left behind 300 years ago. Part 3. Return to a Changed World. The journey back across the sea seemed both longer and shorter than the journey out had been. Time behaved strangely on the border between worlds, stretching and compressing, playing tricks on perception. Sometimes it seemed to Oisín that he had been riding for hours, and sometimes that only moments had passed since leaving the shore of Tír na nOg. But eventually, the coast of Ireland appeared on the horizon, dark cliffs rising from the sea, so different from the white sand beaches of the other world. As they drew closer, Oisín began to see details. The cliffs looked familiar but not quite right, as if they were the same cliffs he had known but worn by centuries of wind and weather. The vegetation was different too. Trees grew where he remembered open meadow, and areas that had been forested in his time now showed signs of clearing and cultivation. The white horse carried him onto the shore, its hooves finding purchase on the rocky beach, and Oisín looked around with growing confusion and dismay. This was Ireland, yes, The very soil called out to him with recognition. But it was an Ireland transformed, aged, changed in ways both subtle and profound. He urged the horse inland, following paths that were familiar in outline but strange in detail. The old roads he had known were gone or overgrown, replaced by new tracks that went in different directions. Forests had disappeared, and new forests had grown up where none had been before. Rivers ran in slightly different courses, having carved new channels over the centuries. And as he rode farther, he began to see people, and this was perhaps the strangest thing of all. They were Irish people, yes, speaking Irish, though the accent had changed, the words had shifted, going about the business of life in an Irish landscape. But they were small. So much smaller than the people Oisín remembered. The warriors of the Fianna had all been tall, strong men, chosen in part for their physical prowess. These people he saw now barely came up to the shoulder of the Fianna warriors he had known. Moreover, they seemed weak. Oisín watched as a group of men struggled to move a large boulder from a field, all of them pushing and straining, their faces red with effort, and the boulder barely budged. Any single warrior of the Fianna could have lifted that boulder with ease, and Oisín himself, in his prime, could have thrown it half the distance across the field. The people stopped their work when they saw him approach, staring in open amazement at the sight of this tall, powerful man mounted on a glowing white horse. They dropped to their knees in a gesture of respect or fear. Oisín could not tell which. "Stand up," he called to them. "I mean you no harm. I am Oisín, son of Fianna. Can you tell me, what has happened to Ireland? Where are the Fianna? Where is my father's fort at the hill of Allen?" The men looked at each other in confusion and wonder. The oldest of them, a gray-haired farmer whose back was bent with a lifetime of labor, stepped forward. "My lord," he said, his voice shaking, "I know not what jest you play with us. Fianna is a legend from ancient days, a hero from the old stories our grandmothers tell by the fire. He died 300 years ago if the tales are true, and the Fianna are long gone. As for the hill of Allen, there are ruins there, old stones so worn by time that no one can say what they once were. You say you are Oisín?" But Oisín was the son of Finn, and he left Ireland centuries ago with a fairy woman, and none have seen him since. Oisín felt as if he had been struck. Niamh had warned him, had told him that 300 years had passed, but hearing it was one thing, seeing the evidence with his own eyes was quite another. 300 years. Everyone he had known was dead. The Fianna existed now only in stories. He himself had passed into legend. "The old stories are true," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I am Oisín, and I went with Niamh to Tir na Nog, and to me it has been only a few years, but to Ireland it has been 3 centuries. Tell me, good people, what has become of Ireland in the time I was gone?" The old farmer and his companions exchanged glances, clearly uncertain whether to believe this tall stranger on his magical horse, but the farmer spoke again. "Much has changed, my lord, if you are indeed who you claim to be. A new faith has come to Ireland, the Christian faith, brought by a holy man named Patrick. The old gods are no longer worshipped as they once were. Churches stand where once there were sacred groves. Monks copy scriptures where once bards sang the old tales. It is a different Ireland now, gentler perhaps, but the age of heroes is past." Oisín sat silent on his horse, absorbing this information. Christianity had come to Ireland. He knew of it vaguely. There had been Christians in the Roman lands, followers of the carpenter's son who they said had risen from death. But for Christianity to have replaced the old ways, for the gods of the Tuatha De Danann to have been supplanted by this new god, it spoke to changes more fundamental than he had imagined. "Is there anyone who still remembers the old days?" he asked. "Anyone who knows the stories of the Fianna as they truly were, not as legend but as history?" "There are some, my lord," the farmer said. "The monks especially, they write down the old tales trying to preserve them. And there is a holy man, a bishop named Patrick, who is said to have great interest in the old stories, though he teaches the new faith. He travels throughout Ireland, baptizing and teaching. Some say he is at Tara even now, converting the High King himself to Christianity. Tara, the great hall of the High Kings, where Oisín had feasted many times in his youth, where he had listened to bards sing and watched champions compete. If this Patrick was at Tara, perhaps Oisín could speak with him, could tell him the true stories of the Fianna before they were lost entirely to legend and fancy. "Thank you, good people," Oisín said. "You have been kind to humor a stranger. I will go to Tara now, to see what has become of the greatest hall in Ireland." He urged the white horse forward, and the farmers scrambled back, still staring in wonder. As he rode away, Oisín could hear them talking amongst themselves in excited whispers, debating whether they had truly met the legendary Oisín or whether this was some other supernatural being playing tricks on them. The ride to Tara took Oisín through a landscape that was at once familiar and alien. He recognized the shape of the hills, the course of the rivers, but everything else had changed. Where he remembered scattered homesteads, there were now villages. Where there had been wilderness, there was cultivation. The Irish people he saw were farmers now, not hunters. They lived in fixed houses rather than moving with the seasons. They grew grain and kept cattle rather than following the deer and boar through the forests. And everywhere he looked, he saw signs of Christianity. Stone crosses stood at crossroads. Small churches dotted the landscape, their timber walls and thatched roofs unmistakable even from a distance. He passed a monastery where monks in simple brown robes worked in fields and gardens, and he heard them singing as they worked, hymns to their new God, strange melodies that had nothing to do with the old songs of Ireland. It made him unutterably sad, this changed Ireland. Not because the change was bad necessarily, the people seemed healthy enough, well-fed, content. But because it was not his Ireland, not the wild, magical land he had left behind. That Ireland existed now only in memory, and soon, when he too was gone, perhaps only in stories that grew less accurate with each telling. As the sun began to set, a real sunset now, with darkness following, not the endless twilight of Tir na Nog, Oisín came in sight of Tara. Or what remained of it. The great wooden hall he remembered, where hundreds of warriors had gathered for the feast of Samhain, was gone. In its place stood ruins, earthen ramparts overgrown with grass, stone foundations barely visible through the vegetation, the ghosts of former glory. But there were also new structures, a church larger than any he had seen so far, with a tall timber cross standing outside it, and several other buildings that might have been residences or workrooms. Light glowed from windows, and Oisín could hear voices raised in song, that same strange Christian music he had heard at the monastery. He dismounted. No, wait. He started to dismount, then remembered Niamh's warning. If his feet touched the ground, 300 years would catch up with him and he would die. So he remained mounted on the white horse, sitting tall in the saddle, and called out, "Hello! I seek the holy man Patrick. Is he here?" The singing stopped. After a moment, people began to emerge from the buildings. Monks in brown robes, warriors in unfamiliar armor, women in simple dresses, and at the front of them, an old man with white hair and a face lined with years of hard living and harder thought. He wore the robes of a bishop, richly embroidered with crosses and other Christian symbols, and he carried a staff topped with a cross of hammered gold. "I am Patrick," the old man said, his voice strong despite his age. "And who are you, stranger, who sits so tall on your fairy horse and will not dismount?" "I am Oisín," Oisín said, "son of Finn mac Cumhaill, warrior and poet of the Fianna. I left Ireland 300 years ago to dwell in Tir na Nog with my wife Niamh. I have returned to see what has become of my homeland, and I find it changed beyond recognition. They tell me you collect the old stories, that you have interest in the days before Christianity came to Ireland. Is this true?" Patrick's eyes widened, and he stepped closer, peering up at Oisín with an intensity that suggested he was trying to determine if this was truth or some elaborate deception. "Oisín," he breathed. "The Oisín? Son of Finn? But that would make you more than 300 years old." "I am exactly as old as I was when I left Ireland," Oisín replied. The land of eternal youth does not lie in its name. Time does not touch those who dwell there. But I am curious, holy man. Why do you care about the old stories? Do they not conflict with your new faith? Truth does not conflict with truth, Patrick said, a small smile crossing his weathered face. And there is truth in the old tales, even if they are wrapped in the trappings of pagan gods and heroes. I collect them because they are part of Ireland's heritage, part of who the Irish people are. Your stories, Oisín, the deeds of the Fianna, they teach honor, courage, loyalty, sacrifice. These are virtues that complement Christian teaching, not oppose it. Please, will you not dismount and rest? Share your stories with me and I will have them written down, preserved for all time. Oisín shook his head, a gesture that held both regret and determination. I cannot dismount, Bishop Patrick. I am bound by a heias, a magical prohibition. If my feet touch Irish soil, I will age 300 years in an instant and die. I can speak with you from horseback, but I cannot dismount, cannot rest, cannot stay long. Soon I must return to Tir na Nog, to my wife and children who wait for me there. Then speak to me now, Patrick said urgently. Tell me of your father Finn, of the great deeds of the Fianna. Tell me of Tir na Nog and what you have seen there. I will have scribes write down every word, so that even when you are gone, your testimony will remain. And so, sitting on the white horse in the gathering darkness outside the ruins of Tara, Oisín began to tell his stories. He spoke of his father Finn, the wisest and greatest leader the Fianna had ever known. He told of the tests warriors had to pass to join their ranks, of the code of honor they lived by, of the battles they had fought and the creatures they had hunted. He spoke of the beauty of Ireland as it had been in the old days, when forests covered the land and the gods still walked among mortals. Patrick listened intently, occasionally asking questions, and behind him, monks with quills and parchment worked to write down everything Oisín said, preserving it for future generations. Hours passed and the moon rose, a real moon waxing gibbous, so different from the strange skies of Tir na Nog, and still Oisín spoke and Patrick listened and the monks wrote. But Patrick was not content only to hear of pagan glories. As the night deepened, he began to speak of his own faith, to tell Oisín about Christ and the new God who had come to Ireland. He spoke of sin and redemption, of heaven and hell, of a God who loved all people and wanted them to turn from their pagan ways and embrace Christianity. And Oisín, who had seen the gods of the Tuatha De Danann with his own eyes, who had lived among them in Tir na Nog, who was married to the daughter of a god, found himself debating theology with this Christian bishop in the ruins of Tara. It was not an angry debate, but a passionate one, two men who loved truth trying to understand each other's vision of the world. Your heaven sounds much like Tir na Nog, Oisín observed at one point. A place of eternal youth and joy, where sorrow is unknown. But in Tir na Nog there is no judgment, no separation of the worthy from the unworthy. All who are invited may come, and all who come are welcome. But that is the weakness of your paradise, Patrick countered gently. Without judgment, without consequence for evil deeds, there is no true justice. Heaven is beautiful precisely because it is earned through virtue, through choosing good over evil even when it is difficult. The Fianna had virtue, Oisín said, his voice heated. We lived by a code as strict as any Christian law. We valued courage, loyalty, generosity, wisdom. We defended the weak and fought against evil. Why would such men be condemned simply because they did not know your Christ? They would not be condemned for ignorance, Patrick said. God judges the heart, not mere knowledge. Your father Finn, if he lived as honorably as you say, may well be in heaven even now, received by a just God who saw the goodness in him. This idea, that his father might be in the Christian heaven rather than in some otherworld realm of the Tuatha De Danann, struck Oisín with unexpected force. He had assumed that the dead of the Fianna would have gone to the halls of the gods, to feast and fight in eternal glory. But what if Patrick was right? What if there was only one heaven, and the old gods were merely aspects of the one true God that Patrick preached? Or what if Patrick was wrong and the old gods were still real, still powerful, and Christianity was simply another story no more true than any other? Oisín did not know, and the not knowing troubled him in a way he had not expected. They talked through the night, Oisín and Patrick, sharing stories and debating philosophy, arguing about the nature of divinity and morality, finding points of agreement and points of irreconcilable difference. And through it all, the white horse stood patient and still, and Oisín remained mounted, never once forgetting Niamh's warning, never once allowing his feet to touch the ground. As dawn approached, and Oisín felt a pang of homesickness for the eternal twilight of Tir na Nog, where dawn and dusk were words without meaning, Patrick made one final plea. Stay longer, Oisín. There is so much more to discuss, so many more stories you could tell. I would write a book of your life, preserving it for all time. And perhaps, if you would consider it, you could be baptized into the Christian faith, could join your people in their new way of worship. But Oisín shook his head. I have stayed too long already, holy man. My wife waits for me in Tir na Nog, and I promised I would return. As for baptism, I cannot abandon the gods I have known, the gods among whom I have lived. The Tuatha De Danann are not mere stories to me, they are my wife's people, my children's heritage. I cannot deny them even for your Christ. Patrick looked sad but understanding. Then go with my blessing, Oisín son of Finn. Return to your wife and your eternal youth. But remember what we have spoken of tonight. Remember that change is not always loss, that the new does not always destroy the old but sometimes fulfills it. Oisín nodded, accepting the blessing though he was not sure he believed in its power. He was preparing to turn the white horse toward the west, toward the sea and Tir na Nog beyond it, when a commotion drew his attention. A group of men were approaching, farmers by the look of them, struggling to move something heavy. As they drew closer, Oisín saw that they were trying to transport a massive stone. A standing stone that had probably been there since ancient times but had fallen and now needed to be moved to clear land for farming. They were making slow progress, a dozen men pulling and pushing, their faces red with strain, and Oisín felt a surge of frustration watching them. In the old days, any warrior of the Fianna could have lifted such a stone single-handed. The weakness of these modern Irish people seemed symbolic of everything that had been lost. Not just the Fianna but the strength and valor they represented. Without thinking, Oisín called out, "Wait! Let me help you." The men looked up in surprise and fear, seeing this tall warrior on his glowing white horse. Oisín rode closer, looking down at the stone. It was large, yes, but not impossibly so. He could lift it easily from horseback, give these struggling farmers the help they clearly needed. He leaned down from the saddle, reaching for the stone. His strong hands found purchase on its rough surface. He shifted his weight, preparing to lift, forgetting in his eagerness to help that he was not standing on solid ground, that all his weight was supported by a saddle and stirrups, that physics still applied even to heroes from legend. The girth strap, the leather band that held the saddle in place on the white horse, had not been made to withstand such strain. It had carried Oisín safely across the sea twice, had never failed before, but now, as Oisín put all his considerable strength into lifting the stone, the old leather reached its breaking point. With a sharp crack that seemed to echo across the hillside, the girth strap snapped. Time seemed to slow. Oisín felt the saddle slip, felt himself beginning to fall. He realized with horror what was happening, tried to drop the stone and grab for the horse's mane, tried to save himself. But it was too late. The saddle was already sliding sideways, already pulling him down toward the ground he had been so careful to avoid. He hit the earth with a thud, landing on his feet and then stumbling to his knees, his hands touching Irish soil for the first time in 300 years. And Niamh's warning, which had seemed almost theoretical before, became terribly, immediately real. Oisín felt the change begin instantly, an invisible weight pressing down on him from all sides. His bones creaked. His muscles weakened. His skin began to wrinkle and sag. His hair, which had been dark brown, turned white as snow in the space of a heartbeat. His straight back bent, his strong legs trembled, his keen eyes dimmed. 300 years of aging compressed into seconds. He tried to stand but couldn't. His legs, which had carried him through countless hunts and battles, which had run across the green hills of Ireland and danced in the halls of Tir na Nog, would no longer support his weight. He collapsed fully onto the ground, feeling the Irish soil beneath him that he had longed to touch but now would be his deathbed. The farmers who had been struggling with the stone stood frozen in horror, watching as the tall, strong warrior transformed before their eyes into a withered old man, ancient beyond belief, barely clinging to life. Patrick rushed forward, kneeling beside Oisín's crumpled form. "Bring water," he shouted to his monks. Quickly. Oisín looked up at the bishop through eyes clouded with age. He tried to speak, but his voice came out as barely a whisper. "The horse. Embar. Send it back to Niamh. Tell her I'm sorry. I broke my promise." The white horse stood nearby, its reins trailing on the ground, looking at Oisín with what might have been sorrow in its large dark eyes. As if it understood his words, the horse turned and began to walk away, back toward the west, back toward the sea, moving slowly at first but then breaking into that supernatural gallop, racing away to carry the news to Niamh that Oisín would not be returning. "Don't try to speak," Patrick said gently, supporting Oisín's head. "Save your strength." But Oisín shook his head, his ancient hand clutching at Patrick's robe with surprising force. "No. Must speak. Must tell you, remember what I said, about the Fianna, about my father. Write it all down. Don't let it be forgotten. Promise me." "I promise," Patrick said, tears running down his weathered cheeks. "Everything you told me tonight has been written down. The deeds of the Fianna will not be forgotten, Oisín. I swear it." A faint smile crossed Oisín's withered face. "Good. That's good. Then some small part of me will remain, even when I am gone." He paused, gathering what little strength remained. "Bishop Patrick, your heaven, is it truly as beautiful as Tir na Nog?" "More beautiful," Patrick said softly. "For it is not just beauty but the presence of God himself that makes it glorious." Then perhaps, Oisín's voice was fading now, barely audible, "perhaps I will see my father there, and we can hunt together again, in green fields that never end." "Would you like me to baptize you?" Patrick asked. "To welcome you into the Christian faith before you pass." Oisín was silent for a long moment, his breathing shallow and labored. Then, with effort that clearly cost him dearly, he nodded once. "Yes, if it means I might see Finn again, and tell him of all that has happened, yes." Patrick took water that one of his monks had brought and made the sign of the cross over Oisín's forehead. "I baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. May God receive you into his kingdom, Oisín son of Finn, last of the Fianna, poet and warrior, husband and father. May you find in heaven all the joy you knew in Tir na Nog and more besides. May you be reunited with all those you loved, and may you know peace at last." Oisín's eyes, which had grown dim with age and approaching death, seemed to clear for just a moment. "I see them," he whispered. "I see my father, and Oscar, and all the Fianna. They are calling me to join them." He took one more breath, shallow and rattling. And then Oisín son of Finn, last of the Fianna, poet of the old Ireland, husband of Niamh of the golden hair, father of 3 children in Tir na Nog, breathed out for the final time and moved no more. Patrick closed Oisín's eyes gently, whispering a prayer for the dead. The monks and farmers stood in respectful silence, witnesses to the end of an age, to the passing of the last living link to a time when heroes walked Ireland and the old gods still had power. Part 4, in Tir na Nog. While Oisín lay dying on Irish soil, the white horse Imbar was racing back across the sea, carrying the news of disaster to Tir na Nog. The horse crossed the boundary between worlds and galloped through the meadows of flowers, past the groves of golden apple trees, straight to the palace where Niamh waited with their children. Niamh knew. The moment she saw Imbar returning without Oisín, she knew. The scream that tore from her throat was unlike any sound that had ever been heard in Tir na Nog, where sorrow was supposed to be unknown. It was the cry of a woman who had just lost her beloved, the anguish of a heart breaking across the distance of worlds. She ran to the horse, clutching at its mane. "Tell me," she demanded, though she already knew the answer. "Tell me what happened." The horse was a magical creature, and in Tir na Nog, such creatures could speak if they chose. Imbar told her, in images and feelings more than words, what had happened. How Oisín had tried to help the farmers, how the girth had broken, how he had fallen to the ground and aged 300 years in an instant, how he had died shortly after. Niamh collapsed to the ground, her golden hair spilling around her like a shroud, and wept as no one had ever wept in the land of eternal youth. Her children gathered around her, young Oscar and Plor na Mban and little Finn, not understanding fully what had happened but knowing that something terrible had occurred, that their father was gone and would not return. The other residents of Tir na Nog, the Tuatha De Danann who had lived for countless ages and thought themselves beyond such mortal concerns as grief, gathered around Niamh and her children. And some of them, seeing the depth of her sorrow, found tears on their own faces for the first time in centuries. For Niamh's grief reminded them that love always carries with it the seed of loss, that to care deeply for another is to make oneself vulnerable to the deepest pain. Manannán mac Lir, Niamh's father, the sea god, came to his daughter and knelt beside her, this ancient and powerful being who commanded the oceans themselves but who could not command away his child's sorrow. "I am sorry," he said simply. "I warned him and you warned him, but he was mortal, and mortals are reckless in ways we cannot fully understand. Their very mortality makes them brave and foolish in equal measure." "I loved him," Niamh said, her voice broken with weeping. "I loved him so much, and now he is gone beyond even our power to reach. I will never see him again, not in all the endless ages to come." "Perhaps not," Manannán said. "But you will remember him, and memory is a kind of presence. And perhaps, in whatever afterlife the mortals go to, whether they're Christian heaven or some other realm, perhaps he will remember you too, and in that mutual remembering, you will still be connected, however tenuously." It was small comfort, but it was something. Niamh held her children close and let herself grieve, and the land of eternal youth learned that day that joy and sorrow are not opposites but companions, that even immortals cannot escape the pain that comes from loving deeply. Part 5. Legacy. In Ireland, Patrick kept his promise. The stories Oisín had told that long night outside Tara were written down, carefully preserved by monks who understood their value even if they did not entirely approve of the pagan content. These stories became part of the great cycles of Irish mythology, treasured and passed down through generations. The tale of Oisín and Niamh, of his journey to Tir na Nog and his tragic return, became one of the most beloved stories in all of Irish folklore. It was told around fires on winter nights, sung by bards at festivals, eventually written down in manuscripts that survive to this day. Through these stories, Oisín achieved a kind of immortality after all, not the physical immortality of Tir na Nog, but the immortality of memory, his name living on as long as people told stories. The place where Oisín died became a site of pilgrimage for those who loved the old tales. Some said his body had turned to dust the moment he died, aging 300 years even in death. Others said Patrick had buried him with full Christian honors, giving this last hero of the pagan age a place in the new Christian Ireland. The truth was lost to time, but the stories remained. In the centuries that followed, as Ireland changed and changed again, as new conquerors came and old ways were forgotten, the story of Oisín served as a reminder of continuity beneath change. It taught that the past never truly dies as long as it is remembered, that love transcends even the boundaries of time and worlds, that tragedy and beauty are often inseparable. Poets and writers across the ages were inspired by Oisín's tale. They wrote their own versions, adding details, changing emphases, interpreting the story through the lens of their own times. Some saw it as a warning against the allure of the other, against leaving one's home and people for fantastic promises. Others saw it as a celebration of love, of the courage it takes to follow one's heart even when it leads to unknown lands. Still others read it as a meditation on time and mortality, on the bittersweet nature of human existence. In the modern age, when the old stories might have been forgotten entirely, scholars and folklorists work to preserve them, recognizing their value not just as quaint relics but as essential parts of Ireland's cultural heritage. The tale of Oisín and Niamh found new audiences, was translated into many languages, reached people who had never set foot in Ireland but who found something universal in this very Irish story. For at its heart, the tale of Oisín is about something everyone can understand: the tension between where we come from and where we go, between past and future, between duty and desire. It is about the price of choice, the weight of promise, the impossibility of truly going home again once we have changed too much. It is about love that bridges worlds, and grief that cannot be comforted, and memory that keeps the dead alive in the hearts of the living. And perhaps, in some realm beyond mortal knowing, Oisín did find his father again. Perhaps in Patrick's heaven or in some other afterlife, the Fianna hunts still through eternal forests, and Finn leads them with wisdom and courage as he did in life, and Oisín is among them once more, composing poetry about impossible beauty, telling stories that never end. Or perhaps the story ends more sadly, with Oisín forever separated from both worlds he loved, cut off from Tír na nOg by his mortal death, unable to join his father and the Fianna because they belonged to a different afterlife, caught between worlds as he was caught between times, alone in ways that even immortals rarely experience. We cannot know. The stories do not tell us. And perhaps that ambiguity is part of their power, allowing each listener or reader to imagine the ending that resonates most truly with their own understanding of love and loss, of time and eternity, of what it means to be human in a world where magic is always just beyond reach but never quite attainable. #epilogue, timeless lessons. And so we come to the end of this tale, though of course some stories never truly end. They simply pause, waiting to be told again, to teach their lessons to new generations who need to hear them. What lessons does the tale of Oisín teach us? Many, depending on who is listening and what they need to hear. But perhaps a few stand out as particularly resonant. First, that time is precious precisely because it is limited. Oisín in Tír na nOg had all the time in the world, and yet he longed for the mortal world where time ran out, where each moment mattered because there would not be infinite moments to follow. The Fianna, who all died within normal mortal lifespans, perhaps lived more fully than Oisín ever did in paradise, because they knew their time was short and made the most of it. Second, that home is not just a place but a time, and we can never truly return to the past. The Ireland Oisín remembered existed only in his memory. The actual Ireland had moved on, changed, transformed into something he barely recognized. We all experience smaller versions of this truth, returning to childhood homes to find them different, reconnecting with old friends to find we have grown apart, realizing that the good old days can never be revisited because they existed in a specific context of who we were and when we lived. Third, that love always involves risk. Niamh risked her heart loving a mortal man who she knew might someday want to return to his former life. Oisín risked everything when he went to Tír na nOg, leaving behind all he knew for a woman he had just met. Both paid prices for these risks. Niamh lost the husband she loved. Oisín lost both the paradise he had found and the homeland he had left. And yet, would either have chosen differently if they could go back? Probably not. The love they shared, however it ended, was real and deep and worth the cost. Fourth, that promises matter, and breaking them has consequences even when the breaking is unintentional. Oisín promised Niamh he would return, promised his feet would not touch Irish soil. He meant to keep these promises, but in a moment of carelessness, helping others out of kindness, he broke them and paid with his life. The story does not let him off the hook because his intentions were good. The Geist, the magical prohibition, did not care about intentions, only about the breaking. Life is often like this, with results that don't match our intent, with consequences out of proportion to our actions. Fifth, that change is inevitable and not always loss. Patrick's Christianity replaced the old ways, and this could be seen as tragedy, the loss of the Fianna's world, the dimming of the old god's power. But it could also be seen as transformation, the same Irish people finding new ways to express old truths, the same values of courage and honor and loyalty finding new contexts. Oisín's death marked the end of one age, but also the beginning of another. Neither is objectively better or worse, they are simply different. Sixth, that stories matter. The only reason we know about Oisín at all is because Patrick had his stories written down, because monks preserved them, because each generation told them to the next. Without stories, the past disappears completely. With them, the dead speak to the living across centuries, teaching and inspiring and warning and consoling. Oisín achieved through story a kind of immortality more powerful than the bodily immortality he had in Tír na nÓg, for his name and deeds are still known, still meaningful, still capable of moving people, more than a millennium after the historical period in which the story is set. These are just some of the lessons embedded in the tale of Oisín and Niamh and Tír na nÓg. Others will find other meanings as each listener or reader brings their own life experience to the story and finds in it resonances with their own joys and sorrows, their own choices and regrets, their own understanding of what it means to be human in a world that is beautiful and terrible, joyful and sorrowful, eternal and fleeting all at once. And now, as this story draws to a close, as your eyes grow heavy and your breathing deepens into the rhythm of approaching sleep, let yourself imagine that you too are traveling to Tír na nÓg, not physically as Oisín did, but in the realm of dreams where time flows differently and anything is possible. Picture yourself on a white horse that glows with gentle light, riding across water that supports you like solid ground. The sea stretches out in all directions, beautiful and calm, its surface reflecting a sky full of stars. The rhythm of the horse's gait is soothing, regular, like a heartbeat or like waves breaking on shore. You feel safe, protected, carried toward something wonderful. On the horizon ahead, you see a green shore approaching, meadows full of flowers, trees heavy with fruit, mountains rising against a sky of impossible beauty. This is Tír na nÓg, the land of eternal youth, and in your dreams you are welcome there. The horse carries you onto the shore, and you dismount onto sand that is soft and warm. You walk into the meadows and flowers bloom with each step you take. The air is sweet with their fragrance, and birds sing melodies so beautiful they make your heart ache with joy. You feel young here, strong, full of energy and wonder. All worries fall away like old clothing you no longer need. You walk through groves of trees, and their leaves whisper secrets in languages older than words. You drink from streams of pure water that taste of starlight and honey. You eat fruits that satisfy every hunger you have ever known. And as you wander through this paradise, you feel yourself growing lighter, less burdened, more at peace. In the distance, you see a palace of white stone, glowing in the perpetual twilight of this magical land. You know somehow that in that palace dwell people who love you, who have been waiting for you, who welcome you home. You begin to walk toward it, in no hurry because time means nothing here, taking your time to appreciate the beauty around you. As you walk, you think about Oisín's story, about the choices he made and their consequences. You think about love and loss, about home and exile, about the past we carry with us and the future we move toward. But these thoughts do not trouble you. Here in Tír na nÓg, even sorrow has beauty, even tragedy teaches wisdom. You understand, in this dream wisdom that comes when the conscious mind is quiet, that Oisín's tale is everyone's tale in some way. We all leave homes, literally or figuratively. We all fall in love, taking risks we cannot fully calculate. We all make promises we may not be able to keep. We all face times when the world we knew has changed beyond recognition. We all eventually confront our own mortality, our own limitations, our own inability to control everything that happens to us. And yet, like Oisín, we keep going. We make choices knowing they might be wrong. We love knowing we might lose. We make promises understanding they might be broken. We venture into unknown lands because something in us yearns for more than the familiar, more than the safe, more than what we already know. This is what it means to be human, to be brave and foolish, wise and reckless, loving and grieving, hoping and fearing, all at the same time. And perhaps that complexity, that contradiction, is more beautiful than the perfect eternal youth of Tir Na Nog, where nothing changes and therefore nothing grows, nothing is risked and therefore nothing is fully won. But for now, in this space between waking and sleeping, let yourself rest in the dream of paradise. Let yourself walk through meadows where flowers never fade, beside streams that run forever clear, beneath skies that hold more stars than you can count. Let yourself be young and strong and free of the burdens you carry in the waking world. Tomorrow you will wake and return to your own life, your own challenges, your own joys and sorrows. But tonight you can rest in Tir Na Nog, in the land of eternal youth, where Oisín once lived in happiness with Niamh of the golden hair, where time moves like honey, where beauty never dims. Sleep now and dream of green shores and white horses, of golden-haired women and magical lands, of love that transcends worlds and poetry that captures the soul of a people. Dream of Ireland in its ancient glory, when the Fianna hunted through its forests and Finn Mac Cumhaill led his warriors with wisdom and courage. Dream of Tir Na Nog, where Niamh still waits, still remembers Oisín, still loves him across the gulf that separates the living from the dead, the mortal from the immortal, the temporal from the eternal. Her love endures, as all true love endures, beyond time and space and even death itself. Let your breathing slow and deepen. Let your muscles relax, releasing tension from your shoulders, your neck, your back. Let your thoughts grow quiet, floating away like clouds across a summer sky. You are safe. You are at peace. You are held in the gentle embrace of story and dream. The white horse waits nearby, ready to carry you deeper into sleep, deeper into dreams, into realms where anything is possible and everything is beautiful. The meadows of Tir Na Nog stretch out before you, endless and inviting. The palace glows in the distance, a destination you can reach whenever you're ready, but there is no hurry, no pressure, no need to do anything but simply be. And as you drift further into sleep, you might hear very faintly the sound of poetry being recited. Oisín's voice, perhaps, speaking words of beauty and wonder, describing the green hills of Ireland and the golden shores of Tir Na Nog, weaving together past and present, mortal and immortal, sorrow and joy into verses that will last forever. Or perhaps you hear singing, Niamh's voice, clear and sweet as crystal, singing songs of love and longing, of memory and hope, of all that was and all that might have been and all that still endures in the space between heartbeats, in the pause between breaths, in the eternal now where stories live. The sound grows softer, more distant as you sink deeper into sleep. The meadows of Tir Na Nog fade into the general landscape of dreams, but their peace remains with you. The white horse becomes a guardian of your sleeping mind, protecting you from nightmares, guiding you toward pleasant dreams. Rest now. Sleep deeply. And know that wherever you travel in your dreams tonight, you carry with you the blessings of ancient Ireland, the courage of the Fianna, the wisdom of Finn, the love of Niamh, the poetry of Oisín. These are your heritage, whether you have Irish blood or not, for stories belong to all who hear them and take them into their hearts. Tomorrow is another day with its own challenges and opportunities, its own joys and sorrows. But tonight you can simply rest, secure in the knowledge that you are part of a story much larger than yourself. A story that began before you were born and will continue after you are gone. A story that includes ancient heroes and magical lands and impossible love and beautiful sorrows and all the complexity and wonder of human existence. Sleep well, dear friend. May your dreams be sweet and your rest be deep. May you wake refreshed and renewed, ready to face whatever comes with courage and grace. And may you carry with you always the knowledge that somewhere beyond the sunset, beyond the western sea, there is a land where youth never fades and beauty never dims, where those we love wait for us with open arms, where all our stories find their proper endings. Good night. Sweet dreams. And may the road rise up to meet you, may the wind be always at your back, may the sun shine warm upon your face, and may you rest tonight in the gentle peace of Tir na Nog, the land of eternal youth. Final blessing. In the old Irish tradition, stories ended with blessings, with words of peace and goodwill spoken over the listeners. So let this story end in that same spirit, with ancient blessings for your rest and your dreams. May you sleep as peacefully as Oisín slept in the arms of Niamh, held safe by love that transcends all boundaries. May your dreams be as beautiful as the meadows of Tir na Nog, full of flowers and birdsong and gentle light. May you wake as refreshed as a warrior of the Fianna after a night under the stars, ready for whatever adventures the new day brings. May you carry always in your heart the courage to love deeply, the wisdom to choose carefully, and the grace to accept both joy and sorrow as parts of the great story of your life. May the ancient gods of Ireland, whether you think of them as real beings or as symbols of human wisdom, watch over you as you sleep and guide you toward your own destiny, whatever that may be. May the memory of Oisín and Niamh remind you that love is worth any risk, that beauty matters even when it fades, that our stories endure long after our bodies have turned to dust. And may you know deep in your bones that you are part of something eternal, not in the sense of living forever in one body, but in the sense that your actions, your loves, your choices, your very existence ripples out through time, touching others, shaping the future in ways you can never fully know. This is the true immortality available to mortals, not the unchanging eternal youth of Tir na Nog, but the living immortality of influence, of connection, of meaning made and shared and passed on to those who come after. Oisín lives still, not in his body which died that day when he fell from the white horse, but in every telling of his story, in every heart that responds to his tale, in every person who hears about Tir na Nog and dreams of lands beyond the sunset where love is eternal and youth never fades. And you, too, will live on in this way, in the memories of those you love, in the effects of your actions, in the stories people tell about you after you are gone. This is the human condition, beautiful and terrible, limited and infinite all at once. But these are thoughts for waking hours, for contemplation in the light of day. Now is the time for rest, for sleep, for letting go of consciousness and drifting into the healing darkness of deep slumber. Close your eyes now if they are not already closed. Feel the weight of your body against the bed, supported and safe. Notice your breath flowing in and out, regular and calm. Let your mind release its grip on thoughts, on worries, on plans and memories. Simply be here in this moment, in this quiet space between waking and sleeping. The story is over, but its echoes remain, rippling through your consciousness like water spreading from a thrown stone. Let those ripples carry you gently into sleep, into dreams, into the deep rest your body and mind need. Somewhere beyond the western sea, Tir na Nog still exists, unchanged by time, eternal and beautiful. Niamh still waits there, her golden hair shining in the perpetual twilight, her love for Oisín undiminished by the centuries. And perhaps, in some realm we cannot see, Oisín walks with his father again, hunting through eternal forests, composing poetry about impossible beauty, at peace at last. These thoughts comfort as sleep approaches, remind us that endings are not always endings, that love endures, that beauty matters, that our stories are worth telling. Rest now. Sleep deeply. And may your dreams be filled with white horses and golden shores, with green hills and ancient heroes, with love that conquers time and poetry that makes the heart sing. Good night, dear friend. Sleep well. And may all your journeys, whether to magical lands or simply through another ordinary day, be blessed with courage, wisdom, love, and peace. Go Ribe Maith Agate for listening to this tale. Oichi Maith, good night. Codlad Sam, peaceful sleep. And so ends the tale of Oisín and Niamh, of Tir na Nog and the Tragic Return, one of Ireland's most beloved legends. A story of love that crossed worlds, of time that could not be stopped, of choices made and promises broken, of sorrow and beauty intertwined. The deeper meanings, Understanding Oisín's journey. Before we let sleep fully claim us, let us linger a while longer in contemplation of this tale, examining its layers of meaning, exploring the wisdom embedded in every element of the story. For the greatest tales are like deep wells. The more you draw from them, the more you find they contain. Consider first the figure of Oisín himself. He was not just any warrior, but a poet-warrior, someone who understood that true strength comes not only from the arm that wields the sword but from the mind that comprehends beauty, the heart that feels deeply, the voice that can give expression to the inexpressible. In the Fianna, warriors were expected to be more than fighters. They had to pass tests of learning and poetry as well as tests of physical prowess. This speaks to a sophisticated understanding of what makes a complete human being, what qualities are truly worth cultivating. Oisín's name itself, little deer or fawn, carries significance. His mother Sab had been transformed into a deer by the druid Fir Doerch, and Oisín was born in that wild state, found by his father Finn only after 7 years of searching. He was thus born between worlds, between human and animal, between civilization and wilderness. This liminal quality, this existing on boundaries, perhaps made him the perfect person to travel between the mortal world and Tir na Nog. He had always been someone who belonged to more than one realm, who understood transformation from his very conception and birth. His role as a poet is also crucial to understanding the story. Poets in ancient Irish society were not mere entertainers or artists. They were historians, teachers, judges, keepers of genealogy and law, intermediaries between the people and the forces that shaped their world. When Oisín went to Tir na Nog, he took with him the memory of the Fianna, the knowledge of how things had been in the heroic age of Ireland. And when he returned, he was able to testify to Patrick about that lost world, ensuring that the stories would be preserved. In a very real sense, Oisín's journey to Tir na Nog and his return were necessary for us to have the stories at all. Without his testimony to Patrick, the tales of the Fianna might have been lost entirely. This raises interesting questions about fate and choice, about whether Oisín's journey was destined from the beginning or whether it was simply a series of choices that happened to have profound consequences. Was Niamh's arrival at Loch Lean that day chance or destiny? Was Oisín meant to go to Tir na Nog specifically so he could return and preserve the stories? Or did he go simply because he fell in love, and the preservation of the stories was a fortunate side effect? The tale doesn't answer these questions definitively, and perhaps that's appropriate. In our own lives, we rarely know whether what happens to us is fate or chance, whether our choices are truly free or determined by forces beyond our understanding. We make our decisions based on incomplete information, following our hearts and hoping for the best, and only later, if ever, do we understand the full significance of what we chose. Now consider Niamh, the woman who came from the other world to find Oisín. She is often portrayed simply as beautiful, as the golden-haired fairy princess who lures the hero away from his homeland. But she is more complex than that. She loved Oisín genuinely, not as a prize or a possession but as a partner. She bore him children. She built a life with him in Tir na Nog. And when he wanted to return to Ireland despite her warnings, she let him go, knowing she might never see him again. This speaks to a kind of love that respects the beloved's autonomy, that doesn't seek to control or possess. Niamh knew the danger of Oisín returning to Ireland. She warned him explicitly about what would happen if his feet touched the ground. She could have refused to give him the horse, could have used her power as one of the Tuatha Dé Dan and to keep him in Tir na Nog against his will. But she didn't. She let him go, honoring his need to see his homeland one last time even though it meant risking losing him forever. This is a powerful model of love, one that holds loosely rather than tightly, that gives freedom even when it's frightening to do so, that trusts the beloved to make their own choices even when those choices might lead to disaster. It's a love that recognizes that trying to keep someone against their will is not really love at all, but a kind of imprisonment disguised as affection. Of course, Niamh's love was rewarded only with loss. Oisín did die in Ireland and she never saw him again. Does this mean her choice to let him go was wrong? Should she have kept him in Tir na Nog by whatever means necessary? The story suggests not, that it was better to love freely and lose than to hold captive and possess. But it's a hard teaching, one that goes against our instinct to protect those we love, to keep them safe even if it means limiting their freedom. Think now about Tir na Nog itself, the land of eternal youth. It is portrayed as paradise, a place of perfect beauty, endless joy, eternal youth. No one ages, no one dies, no one suffers. Time flows differently there, and the harsh realities of mortal existence simply don't apply. It sounds wonderful, and indeed it was wonderful for Oisín during the years he spent there. But the story also suggests that something is missing in Tir na Nog, something essential that mortal life has despite all its hardships. Oisín grew homesick for Ireland, not just for the people he had left behind, but for the land itself, for the very quality of mortal existence. What was he missing? What does mortal life have that eternal paradise lacks? Perhaps it's the very thing that makes life so poignant, its brevity, its fragility, its preciousness precisely because it ends. In Tir na Nog, there is no urgency, no sense that any moment might be the last, no awareness that time is limited and therefore valuable. Days blend into years, blend into centuries without distinction. Nothing is at stake because there are always more tomorrows, infinite tomorrows stretching out forever. In contrast, mortal life has weight and meaning precisely because it is temporary. Every moment matters because there will not be infinite moments. Every choice is significant because we cannot make infinite choices. Every relationship is precious because it will end, either through death or separation. The knowledge of mortality, our own and everyone else's, gives depth and intensity to human existence that eternal life in paradise cannot match. This is a profound and somewhat counterintuitive truth that the tale of Oisín teaches. That limitation can be a gift, that mortality gives life meaning, that paradise might actually be a kind of prison for a soul that understands the value of transience. Oisín needed to return to Ireland not just to see his father but to reconnect with the mortal world where things mattered in ways they could never matter in the eternal unchanging beauty of Tir na Nog. Consider also the white horse, Imbar, that carried Oisín between worlds. This magical creature was itself a kind of liminal being, able to travel across water, able to exist in both the mortal world and the other world, subject to neither time nor death. The horse was Oisín's protection. As long as he stayed mounted, he remained outside the flow of mortal time, unchanged by the centuries that had passed. But the horse was also his limitation. He could observe Ireland but not truly participate in it. He could see what had changed but not interact with the people in any meaningful way. He was like a ghost, present but not present, there but not there. To truly return to Ireland, he would have had to dismount, to touch the ground, to accept his mortality. And the moment he did so, he died. This creates a painful paradox at the heart of the story. Oisín wanted to return to Ireland, but the only way to truly return, to be part of that world again rather than just an observer, was to die. As long as he remained protected by the magic of Tir na Nog, symbolized by the white horse, he could not really come home. Home required mortality, required accepting the passage of time, required becoming vulnerable again. In trying to help those farmers move the stone, Oisín was trying to be useful, to participate, to matter in the mortal world. It was an act of kindness and generosity, consistent with the code of the Fianna that valued helping others. But it was also an act that revealed the fundamental incompatibility between his immortal state and the mortal world he longed to rejoin. You cannot have both eternal youth and meaningful participation in a world of time and change. You must choose. Now think about the broken girth strap, the small mechanical failure that led to Oisín's fall and death. Was this accident or fate? Did the strap break because it was old and worn, a simple mechanical failure with tragic consequences? Or was it destiny, the universe ensuring that Oisín's story ended the way it needed to end, with him touching Irish soil and experiencing the consequences Niamh had warned about? The story doesn't say, and perhaps it doesn't matter. What matters is that a small thing, a piece of leather that normally no one would even notice, became the pivot point on which everything turned. This teaches us that life can change in an instant, that momentous consequences can flow from tiny causes, that we are all more vulnerable than we like to think. Oisín had survived countless battles with the Fianna. He had hunted dangerous creatures, fought supernatural beings, faced death many times and emerged victorious. But in the end he was killed not by a worthy opponent or a heroic challenge, but by a broken strap and a fall from a horse. There is something almost absurd about this and yet also deeply true to life. We imagine our endings will be dramatic, significant, somehow fitting for the lives we've lived. But often they are random, small, almost meaningless. A strap breaks, feet touch ground. 300 years catch up in an instant. And just like that, it's over. The meeting between Oisín and St. Patrick is rich with symbolic meaning. Here we have the last representative of the old pagan Ireland meeting the architect of the new Christian Ireland. They should have been enemies, the warrior poet of the Fianna and the missionary who was ending the world the Fianna had defended. But instead they talked through the night, sharing stories, debating philosophy, finding common ground even as they acknowledged their differences. Patrick wanted to convert Oisín, to bring this last hero of the pagan age into the Christian fold. And in the end, with Oisín dying on the ground, aging 300 years in moments, Patrick did baptize him. But was it truly a conversion, or was it more like a bridge between worlds, a recognition that the old and the new might not be as incompatible as they seemed? The story suggests that Patrick respected the Fianna, valued their code of honor even though it came from a pagan context. He saw that courage, loyalty, generosity, wisdom, the values the Fianna lived by, were not opposed to Christian virtues but aligned with them. And Oisín, in accepting baptism at the end, was not necessarily rejecting his pagan past but accepting that there might be truth in this new faith as well, that perhaps his father Finn and the other heroes of the Fianna might be in the Christian heaven, that the gap between the old religion and the new might not be unbridgeable. This is a more nuanced and sophisticated understanding than simple replacement of one faith by another. It suggests that when Christianity came to Ireland, it didn't simply destroy the old ways but incorporated them, transformed them, created something new that held elements of both. The stories of the Fianna were preserved by Christian monks who saw value in them even though they came from a pagan context. The old gods became fairy folk, diminished but not destroyed. The sacred wells and holy mountains of the Tuatha De Danann became Christian pilgrimage sites, the same places revered but for different reasons. Ireland became Christian, yes, but it became Christian in a distinctly Irish way, one that maintained connections to the pre-Christian past even as it embraced the new faith. And Oisín's meeting with Patrick, his testimony about the old days, his final baptism, all of this can be read as a symbolic representation of this larger cultural transformation. Think about the nature of time in this story. In Tir na Nog, time was circular or spiral without clear progression, seasons that didn't change, days that blended together. 3 years felt like 3 years to Oisín, but 300 years passed in Ireland. This is often read as simply magical. Time moves differently in the other world because magic makes it so. But it might also be understood more symbolically, as a comment on different ways of experiencing time. When we're happy, engaged, absorbed in something we love, time seems to fly by. Hours feel like minutes. The years of Oisín's marriage to Niamh, raising their children, living in paradise, these might have felt like just a few years because he was happy, because nothing unpleasant interrupted the flow of joy. In contrast, think of how time feels when we're waiting, suffering, bored, enduring hardship. Minutes stretch into hours. A single day can feel like a week. If Oisín had been unhappy in Tir na Nog, perhaps those 300 years would have felt like 300 years to him. The difference in time's flow might be less about magic and more about psychological experience, about how happiness compresses time while suffering expands it. This would make Oisín's homesickness more poignant. He was happy in Tir na Nog, genuinely, deeply happy. And yet he still longed for Ireland, still felt that something was missing, still needed to return. This suggests that happiness, while wonderful, is not enough by itself. We also need meaning, connection to our roots, participation in something larger than our own pleasure. Paradise is not enough if we feel disconnected from where we came from who we were before we arrived there. The story also raises questions about identity and change. When Oisín returned to Ireland after 300 years away, was he still the same person who had left? Yes and no. Physically he was unchanged, still young and strong. But his experiences in Tír na nÓg had changed him in ways he probably didn't fully recognize. He had been a husband and father. He had lived among gods. He had experienced life without death, without aging, without the urgency that mortality provides. When he looked at the small, weak farmers struggling with the stone, he couldn't fully understand them anymore. He remembered the Fianna, the great warriors who could have lifted that stone easily, but he had forgotten or perhaps never fully understood that most people were never like that the Fianna were exceptional precisely because ordinary people couldn't do what they did. 300 years in paradise had made him forget what ordinary life was like for ordinary people. This is always the danger of leaving home. We change in ways that make it harder to come back, harder to understand and be understood by those who stayed behind. Oisín's physical return to Ireland was doomed from the start, not just because of the guise about touching the ground, but because he was no longer really Irish in the way the people he met were Irish. Too much had changed, both Ireland and Oisín himself, for a true return to be possible. This speaks to the experience of anyone who has left their homeland and then tried to return after many years. The place has changed. You have changed. The fit that once seemed so perfect no longer exists. You can visit, but you can't really go home because home is not just a place but a time, a context, a version of yourself that no longer exists. Consider the tragedy of Niamh, left behind in Tír na nÓg with 3 children and the knowledge that her husband died alone in a foreign land, aging 300 years in moments, beyond even her power to reach or save. She gave him freedom out of love, and that freedom killed him. She let him go hoping he would return, and he never did. How did she live with that? How did she explain to her children what had happened to their father? How did she endure the centuries that followed, knowing that Oisín was gone forever, that no amount of waiting would bring him back? The story doesn't tell us, but we can imagine. Perhaps she found some comfort in knowing that she had loved well, that she had given Oisín the freedom he needed even though it cost her everything. Perhaps she took solace in their children, raising them to know about their father, keeping his memory alive in Tír na nÓg as Patrick was keeping it alive in Ireland. Perhaps she eventually moved beyond the grief, not forgetting Oisín but learning to live with his absence, finding new purpose in the eternal paradise that had once been enough but might never feel quite complete again. Or perhaps she grieved forever, immortal and inconsolable, her sorrow as eternal as Tír na nÓg itself. Sometimes the stories don't tell us the aftermath, don't show us how people cope with loss. They leave us to imagine, to fill in the gaps with our own understanding of grief and resilience, love and loss. Think about the children Oisín left behind, Oscar, Plorna Mban and young Finn. They were half mortal, half immortal, born in Tír na nÓg but carrying their father's human heritage. What happened to them? Did they grow up in the land of eternal youth, forever young like everyone else there? Or did their mortal half assert itself somehow, making them different from the pure Tuatha De Danann? Did they ever try to visit Ireland themselves, to see the land their father had told them about? Or did they stay safely in Tír na nÓg, heeding the warning of what had happened to Oisín, understanding that the mortal world was not for them? These questions remain unanswered, but they remind us that every story has edges that extend beyond what's told, that every life touches other lives in ways that continue long after the main narrative ends. Oisín's story is also the story of Niamh's loss, of his children's fatherlessness, of Finn's grief at his son's departure, of Patrick's wonder at meeting a living link to the legendary past. Now as sleep draws ever closer, as your breathing becomes slower and your thoughts more dreamlike, Consider what this story means for your own life, your own choices, your own understanding of time and change and love and loss. Have you ever left something behind? A place, a relationship, a version of yourself, and tried to return only to find that return was impossible? Have you ever loved someone enough to let them go, even when letting go might mean losing them forever? Have you ever felt caught between two worlds, belonging fully to neither, trying to honor both but finding the demands incompatible? These are the universal experiences that Oisín's particular story illuminates. His tale is set in ancient Ireland, involves fairy women and magical horses and lands of eternal youth, but at its heart it's about things every human being understands: the longing for home, the impossibility of stopping time, the bittersweet nature of love, the inevitability of change, the courage it takes to make choices knowing we cannot control their outcomes. You carry your own stories, your own journeys to strange lands and attempted returns home. You have your own Niamhs, people who loved you enough to let you go. You have your own white horses, protections that both save you and limit you. You have your own broken girth straps, small failures that cascade into major consequences. And like Oisín, you are navigating a world that is always changing, always different from what it was, always presenting new challenges that require new responses. The past you remember is gone, existing only in memory. The future you imagine may never arrive or may arrive in forms you cannot predict. All you have is this present moment, this now, and the choice of what to do with it. Oisín chose love. He chose adventure. He chose to help others even when helping led to his doom. He chose to tell his stories, ensuring they would outlive him. These were good choices, worthy choices, even though they led to tragedy. For what is the alternative? To never love for fear of loss? To never leave home for fear of being unable to return? To never help others for fear of consequences? To let stories die for lack of testimony? No. Oisín's choices, for all their tragic consequences, affirmed life, affirmed love, affirmed meaning. And his story continues to affirm these things centuries after his death, teaching us that it is better to risk greatly than to never venture at all, better to love deeply than to protect our hearts, better to engage fully with life even knowing it will end than to try to preserve ourselves unchanged and untouched. These are deep thoughts, perhaps too deep for the edge of sleep. Let them settle like silt in still water, drifting down to rest at the bottom of your mind, becoming part of the foundation on which your dreams will build their structures. The meadows of Tir na Nog are still there in your imagination, still green and beautiful, still waiting for you to walk through them in your dreams. Niamh still waits there too, her golden hair shining, her love undiminished. And perhaps Oisín is there as well, returned somehow through the magic of story and memory, reunited with the wife and children he left behind, whole and healed and at peace. Or perhaps he walks through other realms with his father Finn and the heroes of the Fianna, hunting through eternal forests, telling stories around fires that never go out, at home at last in whatever afterlife rewards courage and honor and loyalty. We cannot know, but we can hope. And hope, like story, like love, like memory, has power beyond what logic can account for. Sleep now, truly now, with the blessing of ancient Ireland upon you. Sleep with the protection of Finn's wisdom watching over you. Sleep with the love of Niamh wrapping around you like golden light. Sleep with the poetry of Oisín echoing in your dreams. Sleep with the courage of the Fianna strengthening your spirit. Sleep with the magic of Tir na Nog refreshing your soul. Sleep deeply. Sleep well. Sleep peacefully. And when you wake, may you carry forward something of this story's wisdom into your waking life. The courage to love, the willingness to risk, the understanding that change is inevitable but meaning endures, the knowledge that our stories matter and will outlive us if we tell them truly. Good night, dear friend. May all your dreams be blessed, and may you wake refreshed and renewed, ready for whatever journeys lie ahead. Oisín, good night. Codlad Sam, peaceful sleep. Gom bien idea did, may God bless you. Closing. And so ends the tale of Oisín and Niamh and Tir na Nog, told here for your rest and dreaming. Thank you for journeying with me through this beautiful, tragic story from Irish mythology. If you enjoyed this narrative, please consider liking and subscribing for more tales from Ireland and around the world. Share this with anyone who loves mythology, poetry, or stories that speak to the eternal human experience. May your dreams be sweet, your rest be deep, and may you always remember that the best stories, like Oisín's, live on forever, teaching and inspiring and connecting us across time and space. Sweet dreams, and until next time, may the magic of Ireland bless your sleep. Slank goodbye.